Yeah. Good afternoon. Sunday afternoon, October 13th. This is Bill Kennick. And the reason I made this video, or I'm making this video today, is that I just happened upon a nice combination of shirt and tie thing. And I like that green. It says, hey, you're going to go try these weird green glasses and see what kind of style statement that makes. So this is really all about style statement. Although, normally I like to express my opinions, but I couch them behind astrology. So you have to be careful listening to astrologers or any kind of fortune tellers. In other words, what are they actually seeing in the tea leaves, and how much is a projective test of their own opinions, which they're just I think the tea leaves, for example, tea leaves work, and they are a projective test in a way, but then you see what they're supposed to be doing is picking up psychic impressions. But psychic impressions, everybody has psychic impressions. They're very fleeting. So the tea leaves are a way of focusing your attention. And I suppose I never tried a crystal ball with any luck. I think I tried once, but the whole idea is that's to focus your attention. Now, see, the crystal ball is just a little bit far out for me, although in theory it would be, I'll buy it, in theory. Anyway, we're adjusting here the volume and so on. The whole point being you got to watch out what's a projective test, So when I tell you what I think about the slaughter of the Palestinians, now you already know that I'm biased, right? And I'm not seeing that in the chart so much as in my memory or my active imagination. So, but you got to watch out anybody that pretends he's reading, the cards or the tea leaves, whatever, is also you're getting a good dose of his own biases in there, or his or her own biases. Notice I don't say their own biases because I believe in singular and plural, and I'm not going to do the politically correct thing of negating the singular for the sense of political correctness. In other words, it's his or it's hers, or it's its, or he, she, or something. But it's a singular. It's not there. There is definitely plural. So that's my lesson on grammar today. Let's look at this chart here. I'm not sure. You won't see my pointer. But if you look in the first house, this is why there is a very interesting planet called GongGong. There is really a planet called GongGong, believe it or not. It's one of the dwarf planets, which was discovered, 20 years ago. Or less, or more, there's a whole bunch of, about 7 or 8 dwarf planets. One of them is called Make, another one is called GongGong, and so on and so forth. And they rank as dwarf planets. And I think that they're thinking, the astronomers are trying to put Pluto in there too. The problem was, astrologers, some astrologers, will fall for they said, well, if it's not a planet anymore, well, what is a bunch of astronomers voting on the appropriateness of calling this or that a planet going to invalidate the fact of, you try, what an astrologer will do is try a point And, you know, a good one to try is Lilith, for example. Lilith, you can't even see Lilith. It's a mathematical point in the sky. But, you know, I have no problem with that. I have no problem with the hypothetical planets. Cupid, what is it? Cupid, Hades, Zeus, Kronos, and so on and so forth. Apollo, Admetos, Vulcanus, Poseidon. Those are the hypothetical Uranian planets. Do we have any in this chart? Yeah, well. And then there's the dwarf planets, which are actual physical bodies. And so I use Pluto, too. I don't think it's included this time. But what we were trying to do here is just look at... I had a little configuration on the other computer, but there was like a little box. So I thought, well... but the main point was... And they were, I think, rising when I first did it. No, that's impossible. I guess it's yet to be rising. But anyway, what happens when the moon is conjunct GongGong? Now, the thing about GongGong right now, it's in 4 of Pisces, 59 or something like that. And the moon is in, I think, by this time, 7. Well, let me look. All right, in order to see, I'm going to be blowing my cover here. So long, beautiful glasses, but I can't see. Moon just moved into Pisces, 0 Pisces. Mercury just moved into Scorpio. That's a trine. So we see Moon in the green line, you know, across to Mercury. That's in 0 of Scorpio. So we have beginnings. I think when I started doing this with the other computer in the other room, before I had the bright idea of making a video, they were in 29. So that was the end of matters. And now it's the beginning of matters. Now, see, that was kind of an appropriate question, because I was starting to wonder, well, what have I done? What hast thou done, Kennick? And what Kennick has done this morning is walk out of church. I'm the piano player. You know, I say the prayers along with the congregation, but I never admitted to being a church member. So anyway, I walked out and I lied. I said I'm sick. I was sick in my soul, you know. But I needed a quick excuse and get out of there real quick. I may be called to account for that later. But I was sick in my soul, but it says, you know, what hast thou done, Kennick, and why hast thou done it now? And is there any reason you can really point at? And I'm not willing to go public on my exact prejudices. But suffice it to say, I thought the game had changed. And all of a sudden, this is not a game I wanted to be in. And I don't know if you've ever been with friends or associates and all of a sudden the game changes. Usually has something to do with money, love, or sex. What's the 4th one? I learned this from a lady who was teaching me astrology. Well, she says most people come, you know, when they come to bed, they're going to pay actual good money for a reading. It's usually about health. It's usually about money or love or health. And you know, okay, is sex, that's like love, right? So it's those 3 or 4 things. And usually when things change, you have just discovered or walked into a situation where things have changed. All of a sudden, you know, the people have changed their mind about you, or let's say, or somebody's been, telling stories, true or false, about you, and then you walk in the room and everybody has a stare, and there's a sudden quietness, and they've been talking about you. Well, this wasn't the case here, but the point is, the game has changed, and when the game changes, then sometimes you're stuck. You have to stuck staying there, and they might murder you, or you might leave and wish you had left earlier. Well, in this case, I left earlier. I left it, as soon as I saw it coming. So I don't know what, and they'll never admit. It was very unlikely that they'll admit, we had a plan, we had a scheme on you, and we were going to take you out to the golf course, and do things to you, and so on. That's what we did in high school. So. Now, here's the other point. We have a nice chart. You see the moon and GongGong are conjunct. And GongGong's in, 4? And the moon is in 0 Pisces. And they're exactly, making a nice trine in water signs. Early water sign from 0 Scorpio with the Mercury, going up the green line. Up there. And other people's money. Interesting. Following these planets around, in case you don't know what my symbolisms are, we have the moon. We start in the first house and going, through the houses in their normal counterclockwise order. Moon and GongGong. Now, GongGong means sudden changes, by the way. Then you have the North Node, and now here's where I've manipulated the program a little. That's the sign for Hades, but I use that. That's Willie Waldemuth. That's Willie Waldemuth. Now, if you're trying to use the Uranian astrology Vita cookbook, there is no Waldemuth, and Waldemuth is like Lilith. It's the dark moon Lilith of Ivy Goldstein Jacobson popularized. But if there's no reading for Lilith, you want to read Lilith conjunct the node. Well, they don't have Lilith. Now you could look that up on the internet, and there's a couple of people have something to say about that. But if you want to look in the Uranian book, you use Hades, which isn't exactly the same as Lilith, but there are some similarities. One may be the higher octave of the other, or something like, or the lower octave. All right, moving further along, down towards the bottom, almost near the 4th house cusp is Admetos. That's a Uranian astrology planet. Now, I happen to be interested in that right now because it's exactly square my ascendant. My ascendant is 451. 451 of Virgo, and this is like 448 or something. Now you see, so this is a great, personal meaning to me. But what I'm going to try to do, and I mean, you don't really care about Biill Kennick unless you happen to be born the same day as me. If you want to read this as O.J. Simpson, for example, who was born on the same as my birthday, but a couple hours differently. He still had Virgo rising. He had 17 or 18 of Virgo rising. And most of the planets in pretty much the same place. The moon was had moved an extra degree. So my moon is in 24 of Pisces. His would be in 25 of Pisces. And tell the truth, we didn't really have much in common. I mean, I used to say, well, he married a white woman, so did I. But, that's a joke. He was fleet of foot. Well, I could run pretty fast, but, I didn't have the football fame that he had, and I didn't murder my wife, at least not yet. So, or I wasn't even accused of it. If you assume that OJ is not guilty, then say, well, at least we all agree he was accused of it. Okay, so then moving along, there's Kronos and Mars, which falls. And the reason I like Kronos and Mars is Kronos right now is in 16 of Cancer, and that happens to be my natal sun. So I'm very interested in Kronos, and Mars is not that far away. A few weeks ago, they were making an exact conjunction on my sun, and nothing happened. So here, finally, something happened. I quit the church. Well, at least I walked out. Now I think I quit, but I may chicken out and go back. Maybe this reading will tell me something. But anyway, I did walk out. I didn't walk out, man. I just walked out. And then we have Lilith, the real Lilith. And the real Lilith is it's a mathematical point, which, if I understand it right, it has something to do with the moon and the earth. So the moon revolves around the earth. Now that's what we learn in 8th grade. Now the more sophisticated way of putting that is that the moon and the earth revolve around each other. That would be like a big fat kid and a small kid going round and round, holding two hands and going round and round. But the big fat kid is going to move slower, and he's going to kind of pull the little kid around. And the end result is they are kind of rotating around each other, but the little kid is moving a lot faster than the big fat kid, who's more to the middle. But anyway, that's the earth and the moon. So, but if the moon is not moving on an exact circle around the earth, which it is not, if it's forming a parabola, then one could compute the other axis of the parabola. In other words, a parabola has two centers, and this parabola is supposed to be the axis of the moon, or the parabola, a figure of the moon going around the earth. The moon is in one of the focuses or foci, and this Lilith is a mathematical point that occupies the other spot. And in theory, the interstellar dust should, it is a gravitational point. So, the interstellar dust is accumulating there. In fact, that's what they even say about the other, the dark moon Lilith. It is some sort of mathematical point that is accumulating a cloudy kind of dust. And eventually it'll be a rock, and eventually it'll be a basketball, and eventually it'll be a planet, given long enough. Of course, if it gets heavier, then that screws up the orbit, and everything changes. And, the Earth flies out towards Pluto, and that's the end of us, and so on and so forth. But anyway, that's Lilith. So you have your, for astrological purposes, you have your dark moon Lilith, which is in the second house next to the node, and you have your your real Lilith, your black moon Lilith, they call it, which is now that is a coincidence that is actually opposite. It's not always opposite. That's what makes this an interesting chart, because see, Lilith is in what? What do they say? 11, and this Waldemuth is in 6. So see, they're not exactly opposite. And Waldemuth, but Waldemuth will, as it moves along, it'll come into exact opposition to the dark moon Lilith, or the dark moon Lilith will come into opposition with the black moon Lilith, which moves very slow. And that's on my Neptune in the second house, by the way, which is my money, which is pretty much non-existent. And now that I walked out on my one job, my $25 a week is gone from playing piano at the church. So I've really done it to myself. Now I'm going to be even poorer than I am. Less income, and now some clever astrologers like Robert Hand, whom I used to go to occasionally. I do this stuff, but he first of all, you can't read your own chart, and second of all, he does it way better. And I used to live in the same town as him. That's when Robert Hand was in Washington, D.C. Now he's in Las Vegas and other places. He moves every 10 years. He gets tired of the people and he moves out, moves to the next place. So, but anyway, so 10, 20 years ago, what did he say about me? Was that the point? I forget. Lilith, let's see. Oh, Lilith is in 1147, and what I call Hades, which is 1130. Now these are probably almost exactly opposite now. See, I was mistaken. I was looking at something else. So this is a big time. We have a dark moon Lilith opposite black moon Lilith, and that says something about the world. Now, here's the point. So much talk later. This should also apply to the world, because you don't really care about my life. I do, but you do care about the world. If anybody ever watches this, and I see from the hits I get, it's almost non-existent, my following. Nevertheless, I do it because I like to see myself on video. What to say about the two Liliths opposite each other? And then this particular Horary chart is on the cusp of the 2nd and 8th house. Well, that's money, right? Also happens to be the degree of my money, or close. I'm 8, and there's 11. So there should be some kind of a financial in the world now. In the world, one Lilith opposite the other. Now this Waldemuth moves pretty fast, 3 degrees a day. So we will actually have this happen 3 times a year. It's not in itself an earth-shaking event. It would make the stock market dip. Let's say if that's what it is supposed to do, but it wouldn't necessarily be a crash. It wouldn't be necessarily the crash of 29, because it happens 3 times a year, and we don't have the crash of 29 3 times a year. So now astrologers will say, well, and a combination of factors is what makes for the big events. However, this should be like a little big event, and also remember we live in interesting times right now. I mean, it's easy to predict disaster right now because all you have to do is, there's 2 wars going on in the world. Well, many more. Actually, there's several others. In Bangladesh and in Africa. I mean, they're killing each other all over the place. But the ones that our newspapers, our Western newspapers, bother to tell us about, and the only ones we particularly care about is Israel and the Ukraine. And but anyway, so there's enough disaster going on that it's safe to make drastic predictions right now, as long as it's a prediction of calamity. Now, if somebody had the nerve to predict peace, then it would be a biggie. I remember one time I still don't know if this was real or if it was fixed. But over there in Lake County, Lake County astrologers, of which I was one at one time, a girl by the name of Linda brought over as psychic, who made predictions, wrote them on a piece of paper, and put them in an envelope, and she kept the envelope until they had the meeting. Then he opened it and said, "These are his predictions from 2 weeks ago." And he opened up the envelope and says, "The Vietnam War will end today." And it had ended that morning, hours ago. And he made that prediction 2 weeks ago, or so we are led to believe. So that's one of the most amazing predictions that I ever heard. Except that it was I just don't know about that envelope. I mean, I liked my friend Linda, and she's probably still around. Hello, Linda, if you ever. But she also wanted to believe, and if you want to believe, you might be a co-conspirator and something like that. But anyway, that was something I still wonder about. So we have a big Hades, opposite Hades, but there's something to do with money. Now this is the Horary chart of Alliance, Ohio, and there's there's no New York Stock Exchanges in New York, not Alliance, Ohio, so the cusps would be different. So I have to be careful about. Although I kind of base my look of the world on the fact that I'm tuned into the universe, see, and if I get used to it, I can read. You can read the world through your own chart, because everything, it's wheels within wheels. It's like a clock. See, you might be a little wheel here, turning, but that's turning a bigger cog, and that's turning a bigger cog, and that's turning the watch, and so on. So he says it doesn't matter. Any cog is somehow related to the other cogs, and if you get used to it, you figure out what the ratios are. You can say, well, this little cog called Biill Kennick can tell you a lot about the world. See, now that would happen once in a while. Okay, Biill Kennick will die today. Now, as it turns out, a hurricane hits, or an atomic bomb hits Alliance, Ohio, and Bill Kennick dies, and it coincides with a bigger event. In fact, like thousands of other people died too. So that could happen. It could happen, and good astrology, and you kind of wonder if this could be, but a good astrology. Okay, what happened in Hiroshima, where thousands of people died, 100,000 people died when they dropped an atom bomb. Remember that there was a country that dropped an atom bomb on people once. It was the United States, and they dropped two big bombs Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and thousands and tens and maybe hundreds of thousands of people died all at once. Now, if we were to do their horoscopes, which each one, I mean, obviously, you know, their horoscopes are totally different. So there have to be a couple different configurations that show death. So you say, well, you know, that would be a real challenge for astrology. And then, now, if you had, let's say, this one person happened to live because, you know, he happened to be working inside a cement bunker, you know, measuring for curtains or something, and he lived because he missed, you know, the bomb missed him. Now that would be an interesting horoscope. How come this guy lived and, you know, like 99,000 other people died and he lived? And that would be a good horoscope. I've never seen that done, and I would say, you know, that would be a very severe challenge for astrologers today. You know, how do you explain that thing? So, you know, it pays to take all this stuff with a grain of salt. Nevertheless, I personally believe in astrology. I do it all the time, and I lead my life, my unsuccessful life, by astrology, and I lead my unsuccessful marriage by astrology. So I am a true believer, and I see all those objections, and they are there, and they are amusing, but on balance, I still believe. So, you know, I'm not sure I would advise you to believe, but if you're hooked and you happen to think, you happen to like looking for patterns in the universe, you know, this is the place for you. All right, well, Poseidon is on the 9th house cusp. Now, Poseidon is the planet of philosophy, and the 9th house is the house of philosophy and higher thinking. So, and also is making a nice trine to Kronos. They see that green line between Kronos and Poseidon. Of course, that's been there for a while. I mean, those are slow-moving planets, hypothetical planets. So, you know, it'll be a while. Nevertheless, they're falling on the 9th house cusp today. So this is a philosophical moment. You can say, well, that kind of fits, you know. The moon in GongGong should be coming up to an exact thing against Admetos. I would say some sort of disaster should be happening in the next hour or so. You know, I hope it's somewhere else. Anyway, this is Bill Kennick in Alliance, Ohio, at 5:17 p.m. on Sunday afternoon, October 13th, saying good luck. Head for the hills.